Welcome back to La Pausa, a pints and punditry podcast here at the Pitchside Pub. Welcome to episode 9, coming to you on Monday, February 19th, 2024. It's President's Day here in the States. Doesn't mean much to you folks over in Europe, but it is a holiday here. Not that it matters too much. Today, we want to talk about time, timing, the value of time. It's so important in the decisions that these teams make because so often it's not the decision that is right or wrong, it's the timing of it. And a decision that could be right at one time doesn't make sense at another time, or when the decision is made in concurrence with other decisions matters so much. And I find that to be a common theme going on right now with a lot of the decisions that are being made off the pitch in the footballing world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit it down below. If you're on Spotify, follow the podcast. Please get in that comment section. I would love to get your thoughts on some of these topics. And of course, if you don't already follow us on Twitter, go ahead and do so at Pitchside Pub. The first topic is the ongoing saga, if you will. And we talked about this a little bit in one of last week's episodes of Manchester United going after Dan Ashworth of Newcastle United. He is their sporting director, technical director, director of football, call it what you will. Every club calls it something different. And they want him to take on that role at Manchester United. And it has pretty much become a given that that is going to happen. He has asked for his leave from Newcastle. That's a development from over the weekend. And they have come out and said that they are disappointed. But of course, they wish him well and he's going to go do what he's going to do. So all of this is playing out as expected. But we are getting some of the details, and that's what I want to talk about. The news came out over the weekend. Newcastle United wants £20 million for Dan Ashworth if they want him right now. And Newcastle has all the leverage right here. He's under contract. They can put him in gardening leave until 2025, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But they've told Manchester United for £20 million, you can have him right now. And Manchester United, I suppose, is deliberating on this, but this is the easiest no-brainer decision of all time. Pay the money and get started because time is money and time has value. If you truly believe that Dan Ashworth is the guy, pay the money because £20 million to you, Manchester United, is absolutely nothing. This is a squad that paid £175 million or something like that in transfers last season alone. What is $20 million if you think you have the right guy? This is a club that puts over $1 billion in player values out on the pitch at any given time. What is £20 million to you? Pay it now so that you don't have to wait for your guy for over a year. Now, I'm not saying if Dan Ashworth is the guy or not. His track record's pretty strong. I think he's a good candidate for them to go after. But if you believe that he's the guy, how could you possibly, with all the money you throw around, you've spent $70 million on Rasmus Højlund and a ton of money on Anthony and all these guys, Casemiro and all these players, some of which have worked, some of which have not. You're going to spend those exorbitant amounts of money, and then you're going to get cheap over £20 million. That check should already be written. And I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe they're just making the decision finally this week, and this will be the end of it. But this is the easiest no-brainer in the history of no-brainers as far as I'm concerned, because if you think this is your guy, you need him working for you this summer. You need him starting now. You need him making the decisions this summer. And not waiting a full calendar year, because so much can happen in a year. Your whole club's trajectory can change in a year. You could have 2 more managers in the next year. A year in the football world is a decade in life. I mean, it's the footballing world and the decision-making process just moves so much faster than real life. So the idea of waiting a year for his services is utterly insane. If the price was $200 million, I'd say they should consider it. For $20 million, you pay that for a bench player. You're Manchester United. You pay £20 million for a bench player. If you think Dan Ashworth is your guy, go get him, write the check, and say thank you, Newcastle. We'll take your guy now. So that's where I get back to time, the value of time. Is they need to ask themselves, is $20 million worth it for an additional year of this guy's services? And then they need to think about the things they've wasted 20 million pounds on. And I would guarantee you the list of things that are a bigger waste than having a good director of football operations or a good technical director is long. That's a long list of things they have wasted money on that are worse than that. So, Manchester United, go get your guy. 20 million is nothing. I think there was a quote from Alan Shearer when asked about this, and he said, "Is that it?" And I don't agree with Alan Shearer a lot because he's generally a loudmouth blowhard, but he's absolutely right on this one. I that was my exact response too. That's it. That's it for Manchester United. Toss a zero on there. Extort them. Newcastle, you have all the leverage here. Extort them. Make it 50. Make it 100. I'm shocked it's that low. So Manchester United, pay your amount, go get your guy, and move on. Um, timing matters. Timing matters so much, and that is the driving force behind a lot of the coaching decisions that are being made right now. The firings, the rumored firings, a lot of them have to do with is there a suitable replacement already lined up? And for the record, I hate this process of holding on to your manager until the replacement that you want is ready to come in. No, if you're thinking about making a change, get rid of your guy. Get rid of your guy. Put somebody there as a caretaker, as the interim to hold down the fort. Then you can go. Then you can go solidify the guy you want. But to sit there and just let the manager keep doing his job or trying to do his job while you're actively negotiating with somebody else, man, if I'm the new guy, I'd be saying, I don't want to work for you. This is not a place I want to work, but the timing does matter. And if you got the replacement, unfortunately, does matter. But also the timing of where we are in the season. We are approaching that point in the year where the panic sets in and the fear of relegation sets in, or in some cases, the fear of missing a top four and missing out on next year's Champions League, and thus the money that comes with that. It's all obviously money driven, right? You've got the money loss that comes with being relegated. You've got the money loss that comes from not making the Champions League, and it's frightening. And I get it. I have said very openly, and I will continue to bang this drum that I think managers in European football are fired way too quickly and way too easily. That doesn't mean they're all bad decisions. That doesn't mean they're all bad decisions. Sometimes a manager comes in and he just doesn't work out, and he should be fired relatively quickly. That makes the bad decision hiring him in the first place. But it's not always a bad decision. But in general, I think they are fired way too quickly, way too aggressively. And you look at the best clubs in Europe, and they're the ones that have long-standing managers who build a program. We've talked in earlier podcasts about the ancillary benefits of that, and guys like Klopp, and how it trickles down to academies and things of that nature. But we are now approaching that time of year where management gets panicky, owners get panicky, technical directors get panicky, and they see relegation looming, or they see a sixth place finish looming, and their only move is to make a switch. And that's when desperate things happen. So the timing matters. We've got a couple developments. The one in the Premier League is Roy Hodgson, who unfortunately there's a variable of him falling ill and ending up in the hospital that, fortunately for his reputation, will end up being the official reason why he is no longer going to be in charge of Crystal Palace. It's going to technically be a resignation on his part, and of course we hope that he is healthy, and it sounds like he's doing okay. But he's an older guy, and now he's having some health issues, and so he's going to resign his duties. I think we can all admit that's a nice cover story for the firing that was probably going to happen. And I'm not saying he faked being ill. I'm sure that really happened. But the timing there helped him save some face because he was almost certainly going to get fired. The fan base has turned on him and the club, and there were some chants at some previous games. And Roy Hodgson deserves better. He's got a long history in this game, and he deserves a better fate. But to be honest, was not getting the job done, and that is not a firing that I think was um, a knee-jerk reaction. They are closer to relegation than they ought to be. They are only a few points clear. And Luton is putting up a fight and is on their heels, and Everton's still down in that relegation zone, and they're going to put up a battle. So Crystal Palace is going to fight for their life here. And I don't know that Roy Hodgson was the guy to do that. They were playing some very uninspired football for him. The question with him is what did we think was going to happen? And then I get back to it's not the firing after 11 months at the helm that is the bad decision. It was the hiring of him in the first place. Did we really think an elderly Roy Hodgson was going to come in and light the fire under these guys? And again, nothing against him or his career, and he's been a lifelong footballer and good lead guy for a lot of clubs. But what did we really think was going to happen? Was he going to be a long-term solution in his mid-70s? I don't think so. So when they fired Patrick Vieira last year, it's very questionable that they turned to Roy Hodgson in the first place, and I don't really know why we would have thought this was going to turn out any differently. So, but I understand the timing here. Back to the timing. They are on the cusp. They have relegation looming, and they need somebody who can light a fire under that team's ass a little bit because they do have some talent and they probably shouldn't be as low as they are. They've had a few injuries, but who hasn't? That's not an excuse. So I get the timing on that one, and the writing was pretty much on the wall for Roy, and so that one makes sense. Um, but we see a similar type situation in Napoli, where they're about to fire a second manager this year and go with a third one. Napoli, who won Serie A last year and is in the Champions League still. It is in the round of 16, but they're not having a good year. They're down in the table, and it's looking like they may not make next year's Champions League unless they go on a run in the Champions League this year. And that is calling for some desperation. There's a lot of money involved with making the Champions League, and the Serie A teams need that money. They are not quite as flush with cash as the Premier League teams are, and so they are on the cusp of firing, Walter Missouri, and I'm sure I butchered that, but deal with it. And this is days before a matchup with Barcelona in the round of 16 in the Champions League. And that's the stuff that really makes me question again the timing. And yes, time is running out in Serie A, and if the team is playing truly uninspired football behind a manager, I suppose you don't want that bad product to go, play in the round of 16. But is a new manager going to come in and in a matter of days implement a new system? No. So you're basically just going to have to say, go do your best with what you've already been doing. Well, that's not going to go well. The only saving grace they have is Barcelona's also a dumpster fire with a manager who's already announced he's not coming back. So, the timing of this is very strange, but it's the value of time. There are only so many games left, and now every game matters, and every dropped point is amplified and is worth more because you're looking at dollar signs missed, not points missed, right? It's not, oh, we ended up in fifth, not fourth. No, it's we're going to miss out on $15 million of revenue next year, and that matters. That's the difference between keeping, Victor Osimhen or not. And he's probably gone anyway, but you know what I mean. And so it sets the panic in. And Napoli may be making a very rash decision. Nothing is final there yet, but it'll be interesting to see if they have a new manager leading them in the Champions League, come this week. So the timing matters. Timing's going to matter in Germany. Is Thomas Tuchel on the way out? A bad loss this weekend, a bad loss. And again, he comes to the media and says, oh, this is if we played this game nine times, nine more times, we'd win all nine of them. Well, you didn't. And his excuse every post game when they have a disappointing performance is, well, we had a really good week of training and they're just not bringing it up to the pitch. Well, that's on you, coach. That's your fault. That's what a coach does, is gets a team ready to play and make sure that they put their best foot forward during the weekend. So, Bayern is now significantly behind Bayer Leverkusen, who continues to roll and just dominate opponents, and they're running out of time. Again, back to our timing, a common theme here is Is the powers that be, are the powers that be at Bayern Munich going to make this move because time is running out? And if they want their 12th straight title, they need to make the move now because it's clear that Thomas Tuchel is not motivating his team the way they need to be. And in their case, they're a talented enough team that they should be winning the league. And Bayern's great. Bayer Leverkusen's great, but Bayern is probably a more talented team. We talked about that a couple episodes ago about being less than the sum of their parts, whereas Xabi Alonso is getting his club to be better than the sum of their parts, and that's what good coaches do. So, and with a guy like Tuchel, again, timing. He doesn't last anywhere. He's a 2 year in and out kind of guy, and so when you try to evaluate a move and should a guy be fired or not, well, again, every club should be striving for their long-term solution. Every club should be looking for a guy who can be a successful manager for a decade, right? You're looking for Pep, you're looking for Klopp, you're looking for well, there aren't a lot of examples of this, but that's what you're looking for. That's what you should be looking for. I think Mikel Arteta has the ability to be that at Arsenal. Um, and you're looking for that. Barcelona's looking for it. Real Madrid's going to be looking for it when they move on from Ancelotti, and maybe Tottenham found it in Ange Postecoglou. We'll see. But you're looking for that guy who can be a long-term solution. It wasn't going to be Roy Hodgson at Crystal Palace for age reasons, and it wasn't going to be Thomas Tuchel at Bayern Munich because he's a jerk who wears out his welcome everywhere he goes, and this will be his fifth stop in a row where he hasn't lasted more than 2 years. So you got to look at track records, and so when you're looking at the timing of this and are they running out of time, I would say that's a bad reason to make a move if you think you have a good guy and maybe the team's just underachieving and you say, no, well, we're not playing the way we want to, but Tuchel's a good manager and he's our future. And so, yeah, even if it costs us a title this year, we're going to keep him around because it's going to win us multiple titles down the road. I'd be fine with that line of thinking, but that's not Thomas Tuchel. That's not Tuchel because he's not going to be there that long. So you look at the timing of these things, and that's what I find really, really fascinating. We are approaching that time of the year where the panic sets in and clubs make rash decisions, and it's almost always the manager. It's almost always the manager that has to go. It's not the manager that has to go in Paris, at PSG. It is Kylian Mbappe, who is, it appears, reports say, is now officially leaving. And this has been dragged on for, well, what feels like years, but it came back to the forefront right after the transfer deadline a couple weeks ago, and the links with Real Madrid, but nothing official, nothing official, nothing official. And now there are reports coming out that says he has officially signed a contract with Real Madrid. Now they can't make the big announcement in the presentation and all that stuff while he's still playing for PSG. So that's probably the best we will get for now. But that is a report that he has indeed signed a contract. And it's, again, timing. It's interesting timing because this is a unique situation where he can actually negotiate and do this, but he's still playing for PSG. Except he didn't. He didn't start this weekend. Now, he came on as a substitute and scored a goal as the penalty taker, but he did not start for PSG in their league game this weekend. And this is just a very PSG thing to do. I'm sure this came from the top. This did not feel like a managerial decision. I'm sure this came from the top and said, well, you know what? If he's officially gone, don't start him, right? And he'll start when the Champions League rolls around because they need him. And he came on as a substitute and, of course, had an impact. But this is just a very PSG thing to do because they simply don't need him to win the French league. They have not lost to a French opponent in 21 games since September when they lost 3-2 to Nice when they sort of stumbled out of the blocks, if you remember back. Feels like forever ago. About 4 or 5 games in, we were legitimately wondering if this was the year that somebody else could take on PSG in League One. At least I was wondering it. It has not turned out to be that way. That league has been a runaway for a month now. But they don't need Kylian Mbappe to win that league. And so they're doing their little semi-punishment thing, and he probably could care less at this point because he's already got one foot out the door, and he'll try hard in the Champions League because it's potential Champions League glory, but they're not going to win it. He knows that. They know they'll win the French league, and off they go, and that's what PSG does these days, is they win the French league by 10 points. They make it to the round of 16, maybe the round of 8, again, the Champions League, and then they flame out because they're just not as good. And that's been the MO for PSG for a couple of years now. But the timing of all this stuff is just so strange for them because it's such a unique situation where he was allowed to negotiate with Real Madrid because of his contract status. And the fact that he's already being linked so strongly to them and that it's a foregone conclusion, but the guy is still playing out his contract. We just don't see this a lot in European football, and we almost never see it with a player of his magnitude. And Kylian Mbappe has had his ups and downs, but the ups vastly outweigh the downs. And he is one of, if not the best player in the world. And he showed it in the World Cup, and it will be interesting to see him be challenged at a higher league. But you can't deny the results. And he is probably the best player in the world right now, and he's certainly in the top 5, and he's in that discussion. And so we don't see this sort of situation and this timing with players of his caliber very often, which make it a very, very unique situation. But yeah, the timing of it is weird with them sort of coasting through the end of the French league, but still very active in the Champions League, and he's signing contracts in Madrid, and the whole thing is really just very, very strange. And if this was happening in the Premier League, the world would be going nuts. But because it's the French league, it gets downplayed a little bit. But it shouldn't, because Kylian Mbappe is a French superstar leaving the best French team for greener pastures. And it's a shocking development, other than the fact that we've known it's been coming for about 2 years now. So the timing of it is very strange. But that's what this is all about. This is all about timing. Everywhere is timing. And all these decisions. Dan Ashworth, coming now versus a year from now makes a huge difference. And, Roy Hodgson stepping down now versus 4 games from now could be the difference between Palace staying up or not. And if Napoli wants to fire their manager 2 days before a Champions League game, that timing is incredible. And does Bayern have enough time left to right the ship in the Bundesliga? Probably not, but they know it's not going to be behind Thomas Tuchel. So it is now when they pull the trigger after a bad weekend loss. It's all about timing, and all of these decisions in and of themselves are one thing, but they have different repercussions based on the timing of them. So what I find so fascinating is the value of the time and the timing of these decisions throughout European football. And this is everywhere. This is business. This is life. But it's really coming to the forefront here in some of the decisions that are happening off the pitch in various countries and for various clubs. I'd love to get your thoughts, particularly on the Ashworth stuff. If you're Manchester United, if you're a fan, do you pay the $20 million? Hell, it's not your money. What do you care? But do you think that's worthwhile? I think it is, given how much they've wasted over the years. It's a no-brainer for me. How do you feel about Palace fans? How do you feel about Roy Hodgson? Bayern fans, Tuchel? I know you're at your wits' end. So I'd love to hear from you. Get in the comments down below on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you're listening, watching, whatever. I'd love to get your feedback on this. Also, give me the feedback on Twitter at PitchsidePub. And of course, if you don't already subscribe to the channel, go ahead and do that as well. Thanks as always for joining us on La Pausa, Episode 9, a Pints and Punditry podcast here at the Pitchside Pub.